What's a true crime cold case that just doesn't sit right with you? The Mary Morris murders. Two women both named Mary Morris that were both killed just a few days apart in a really close proximity to each other. Heather Teague. She was dragged into the woods from a riverbank. The abduction was witnessed from across the river by a man using a telescope. My aunt was on a trip across Summer Asia with her friends. The one friend had planned to go to Hong Kong, but the rest didn't want to, so they decided they would all just meet up at the next country and let her go to Hong Kong by herself. They heard from her when she got off the plane, and not again. It's been about 15 years. A local case from 1977. A small Indiana town with a population of less than 2,000 had 3 unsolved child murders committed in the same year. After the third murder, the killings stopped, and the cases remain unsolved. The owner of a funeral home business went to Camden, Maine with his wife. They had some kind of altercation. The wife disappeared and was never found. Police in the hometown think they know that there was foul play, but have no leads that they can follow. The case is closed. Isla Reynolds. An 18-month-old baby with a broken arm disappears from her dad's house in the middle of the night while her dad, his sister and his girlfriend are asleep. Blood was found in the basement. It's been 10+ years, and no arrests have been made, and her body has never been found. This happened in Maine. Jody Husentroot disappeared after telling a coworker she overslept and was running late. Signs of struggle outside of her apartment, but they never found her. This was back in 95. Dale Hay. His girlfriend Dana was terrorized and followed to her house by a truck after she passed it because the driver was too slow. The driver drives away once, comes back, Dale goes out to yell at the guy and the truck took off, but returns later on. So, he chased the truck in his Jeep. After he was gone a few hours, his girlfriend and son went looking for him, and Dale was found dead in his Jeep with a single bullet hole in his head. It sounds like road rage, but it also seems like the driver wanted someone to come out after them. Maybe they wanted to murder Dale, or maybe they wanted to kill Dana and settled for Dale. The disappearance of Kieran Horman. The kid was at school with his stepmom. She saw him walk down the hall in the school, and he was never seen again. Gone. Disappeared without a trace. There's no evidence at all. People like to believe the stepmother killed him or something, but there is no sound evidence, and I believe the search for him was the most money Oregon has spent on a missing person case. Over 10 years later, and there's still nothing. That family that got murdered in the French Alps and the cyclist who came across the scene and the little girl stayed still under her mum's dress for 8 hours. It's not necessarily a cold case, but there were several, 2 to 5, of John Wayne Gacy's victims who went missing, while Gacy was confirmed to be out of town. The bodies of those victims were all under his house. That means someone else had to at least kidnap and hold the victim until Gacy returned, if the accomplice or accomplices didn't actually murder the boys. Jessica Chambers. She was set on fire inside her vehicle and was found by paramedics walking down the road fully engulfed in flames. Murder that happened in my town a couple years ago, Missy Beavers in Midlothian, Texas. Not sure if anyone knows about this one, but she was my grandma's friend and a fitness instructor. While at a church preparing for her early morning workout class, someone walked in and was caught on camera wearing what looked like a full SWAT team uniform and killed her with a hammer, basically just destroying her head from what I heard. Apparently they brought in the FBI and they have repeatedly said they have a suspect, but no one's been arrested yet. Note, I didn't research anything, this is literally just what I remember hearing about it. If I used the wrong name or got the details wrong, which I probably did, apologies. The Black Dahlia case. The fact that such a gruesome act of murder was committed, and that the lead suspect is very likely the killer, but didn't serve jail time, sickens me. Also, it's quite interesting how one of the suspects died on the anniversary of the last time she was seen alive. I don't remember her name, but I saw one on a cold case TV show that left me screaming at the detective. 6 women mysteriously vanished from her work without a trace, and they found her body a few weeks later. During this time, they showed interviews with her husband, who she married pretty recently, I think. And the way he talked about her was terrifying. He went on and on about how he hated her kids, they were taking her away from him, she wasn't allowed to be anyone else's, etc. Never made any sort of expression other than a blank stare. Near the end of the episode, he talked about how he slept with her urn every night and frolicked in the ashes every morning. He lied to her son that he lost the urn so that the kids wouldn't have access to their mom's memorial. His last statement was that he was glad she was dead cause it meant that nobody else could have her. The episode concluded with the narrator saying that they currently had no suspects. I mean, come on. That horrible double murder case from Delphi, Indiana. That piece of shit needs to be caught. Shannon Polk 11-year-old girl kidnapped and later found murdered in my hometown, Prattville, Alabama. It's been 20 years and they still don't know who did it. Michael Dunahy. Posters for this kid were everywhere when I was a kid. He disappeared from a playground in Victoria, BC in 1991. The latest theory is that he's out there somewhere with no memory of who he was. RCMP recently released a composition of what he might look like now in hopes that it will trigger him to remember and come forward. Lori Deppies vanished in Wisconsin in 1992. No viable suspects and her body was never found. She just vanished one night shortly after she arrived at her friend's apartment complex, car door open, and no sign of a struggle. For true crime buffs, one potential suspect is Chuck Avery, the older brother to Stephen Avery, subject of Netflix's docu-series Making a Murderer. Turns out Chuck is violent rapist and pedophile. Brandon Swanson. Seriously, go listen to the Morbid podcast about him. It's episode 293/294. So much that's odd about it. I listened to it earlier this week and I can't stop trying to figure it out. Dude is on his way home from a party on a straight road to his house that he takes every day and knows really well, calls his parents as he needs help pushing his car out of a ditch. When they arrived to where he described he was nowhere to be seen. They call for 47 minutes talking the whole time, he's flashing his lights, they're honking their horn, can't find each other. The next day the cell phone records are pinged to a mast literally miles away, and when that road is searched, there's his car but not him. The last thing they heard him say on the phone was "oh shit," then the call went silent. No body was ever found, no possible explanation given. There was that one guy who was acting unusual at an airport, so security pulled him in. He said people were after him, and he wasn't safe. Security left or get him a drink. There is CCTV of him bolting full speed from the airport and jumping the fence. Never seen again. A couple of police officers intentionally shot at each here in Ontario around the Niagara Falls area, and no one is providing an explanation as to WTF is going on. The boy in the box always makes me very sad. No one ever found who he was and it just hurts my heart so much that there's some family out there that will never know what happened to their little boy and that he died in such a horrific and scary way. Sylvia likens torture and murder. How the fuck were so many evil people living in one town? Yogurt shop murders in Austin, TX. False confessions, overturned convictions, DNA not giving the answers. This case is so confusing. But someone raped and killed 4 teenage girls before setting a fire, and we still don't know who they are. It's not okay. There was a hit and run in my hometown several years back. About 10 years ago, a hometown confessions page popped up on Facebook. Most of it was dumb petty shit, but then someone anonymously admitted to committing the crime. The victim's mother saw it and became distraught all over again. She offered up a cash reward for anyone that would come forward with information. She reached out to the local PD, and they tried to get Facebook to disclose the information, but I don't think they ever did. To my knowledge, it's still unsolved. What sits weirdly with me is one of the city councilmen was arrested for DUI on that same road a few years ago. He was not charged as he got the field sobriety test thrown out because it was discovered that the road has a slant and is very uneven cut. One that has stuck with me is the missing boy named Andy Puglisi. They have a documentary about his disappearance called "Have you seen Andy?" The little boy went missing from a public pool in 1976 in Lawrence, Massachusetts. He was 10 years old at the time of his disappearance. D.B. Cooper. Able to hijack a plane, get tons of money and parachute out with no body, and very little of the money being found since. In 1991, the body of a man James Allen Killam was found by hikers close to a path in New Brunswick, Canada. According to newspapers, they had no suspects. However, someone I know was a former roommate that owed Killam money. Killam even told his mother that someone was out to get him. After his death, Killam's car was found in the parking garage of a building the person I know worked in. This same person was caught and charged with credit card theft/fraud for using Killam's credit cards after he went missing. The murder weapon was determined to be a knife. The person I know gave a knife to their friend to hold for safekeeping. The person I know went to trial, which ended in it being thrown out due to circumstantial evidence. I can't prove it, but I'm convinced the person I know is a murderer and he got away with it. Alexandra Wawakuk. Young nurse who went for a walk in Saskatoon, SK, Canada in 1962 and never came home. 2 weeks later, she was found partially buried in a shallow grave a few blocks from her apartment. What doesn't sit right with me is her next door neighbor across the alley was a 48-year-old postal carrier who was involved with an infamous California murder case in the 20s. The 20s case was made into a Hollywood movie, but his name is never brought up in the 62 investigation, or now as a cold case. Even in a biography about the guy, the nurse's death is glossed over in a single sentence. For me, the hardest thing about cold cases is that the police often know who it is, or strongly suspect who it is. They simply do not have enough evidence to charge that person. For example, detectives identified the Green River Killer immediately. Couldn't afford to keep a 24/7 surveillance on him. DNA evidence developed 30 years later finally convicts their original suspect. There are many cases where what a suspect is saying simply doesn't add up. Sometimes you can prove someone is lying, but you simply don't have enough evidence to convict them, even though it's the most likely explanation for what happened. It makes me wonder how many cases would be solved if future technology existed now, if that makes sense. Like if 30 years from now we will have another breakthrough in fighting crime, like we did when DNA technology advanced. I hope so. And I hope we develop as a society a way to prevent crime that is so effective that reactionary and detective measures won't be as sorely needed. Asher Degree. She was so young, there is no way she decided to pack up her things and run away in the middle of the night. I'm not really a true crime guy, but I've read about the 44 Days in Hell story. And the fact that those kids couldn't receive a life sentence because they were minors in Japan. And these so-called laws protected minors. That shit is horrible. Michael Negrete. Disappeared at Ucla near his dorm to never be heard of again in the 90s. My sister was friends with his little brother. Amy Robechtel, we are learning about it in my English class. She went to plan a 10K and disappeared. Only her car and keys were found. Holly Bobo's murder. The most logical suspect was ruled out very early on and drug addicts were found guilty